and a very big warm welcome to Mickey Harte. You're going to have to put up with me now for a small moment of introduction. Just to put a context on what we're doing tonight. By the way, there's a man to go at the back who deserves to be mentioned as well, Harte. And if there are more hidden stars here, and there probably are, blame me. So, dear friends, in planning our parish Golden Jubilee, we were conscious of the large part which sport plays in the life of our community, and I suppose every community. And it's quite remarkable the extent to which sport figures in our lives, how deeply embedded it is in our culture. For participants, sportsmen and women, it is a quest for excellence and for glory, something of the Civius, Altius and Fortius of the Olympic spirit, faster, higher, stronger. For spectators, it is the entertainment and escape. It's shared identity. It's the joy in victory, mutual commiseration in defeat. So many values and virtues are fostered in a sporting life, such as dedication, commitment, team spirit and solidarity, loyalty and mutual support, friendship and community, endurance and sacrifice, character and courage. And I'm sure there's many, many more virtues and qualities that we can trace to our sporting activity. In this parish we have our own sporting heroes and many codes, and you've met some of them now. I'm really grateful to them for joining us this evening. They have often raised our spirits and our pride on so many occasions. Our patron St. Paul had recourse to sporting metaphors and images to illustrate the gospel and the good news. We can find in his writings, in the letter to the Corinthians, these quotations. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize? Run in such a way as to get the prize. Everyone who competes in the games goes into strict training. They do it to get a crown that will not last, but we do it to get a crown that will last forever. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. And again from St. Paul, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. So, when it came to finding someone who would help us to reflect on the place of sport in our lives and its connection to meaning and faith, the name of Mickey Harte came quickly to mind. And of course, many of us have been reading his autobiography, Devotion. Presence is the only thing. But we were delighted to think of him, and even more delighted when Derek, who knows Mickey and their friends, Derek put in a word for us, and Mickey gave us an immediate yes. So we're really grateful to him for that very prompt response to us, and for travelling all the way down. I know he went down to the southwest before to meet the Kerry enemy. But this is a friendly visit to the southeast. But I suppose if we make progress in football, we might change. Anyway, so Mickey's CV is probably known to most of us. I want to give you a potted run of it. He'd be embarrassed, but anyway, I think we should headline Mickey's achievements. Gaelic football manager with Tyrone, presently with County Louth, but was with Tyrone from 2002 to 2020. He was, at the time of his retirement, the longest serving manager then active with the same team in inter-county competition. He's the most successful senior manager in the county's history, having led it to 3 All-Ireland senior football titles. I think it's 2003, 2005 and 2008, as well as 6 Ulster titles, 1 National League and 12 Dr. McKenna Cups. Considered one of the best tacticians of the game, he is admired both by peers and former rivals. Of course, he has also had tremendous success with the underage teams, minor, under-21, and winning All-Irelands at every level. Mickey is married to Marion, who travelled with me today, and they have 4 children, and you will know that. I will mention, Mickey, if I may, your beloved daughter Michaela, who was murdered on her honeymoon in Mauritius in 2011. I know it's difficult to mention painful facts like this, but you have the heart of a country with you, and you still have, through the pain that has inflicted on you and your family. And you lost, I believe, 2 of your brothers at the same time, so we remember them as well. So, Mickey, we have known you from afar in your trials and in your triumphs, but tonight we are so glad to meet you and to hear you in person. So thank you. The mic is yours.
Things that happened in my life, and I'll elaborate a wee bit on some of them as well. But when I want to speak to a group, sometimes I like to start with telling a little story that I believe is humorous, and then I hope that your sense of humour connects with mine, or otherwise it's not a good idea. And there's also a good moral in this story as well, which I think is important. So the story goes, an atheist was walking through the woods one day, of majestic trees, he said to himself, what powerful rivers with beautiful animals. As he was walking alongside the river, he heard a rustling in the bushes behind him. He turned to find a 7-foot grizzly bear charging towards him. He ran as fast as he could up the path, looked over his shoulder and saw the bear was closing in on him. Then he tripped and fell on the ground. He rolled over to pick himself up, and he saw the bear was right on top of him, reaching for him with his left paw and raising his right to strike him. At that instant, the atheist cried out, "Oh my God!" Time stopped, the bear froze, and the forest was silent. As a bright light shone upon the man, a voice came out of the sky. You deny my existence for all these years, teach others ungodly things, and even credit creation the cosmic accident that boomed. Do you expect me to help you out of this predicament? Am I to count on you as a believer? The atheist looked directly into the light and answered, it would be hypocritical of me to suddenly ask you to treat me as a Christian now, but perhaps you can make the bear Christian. Very well, the voice said, the light went out and the sounds of the forest resumed. The bear slowly brought both paws together, bowed his head and said, Lord, bless this food which I'm about to receive. Anyway, that's good when you share a sense of humour and get started right. I'm going to share a few things with you, I suppose, about my background in my life and my growing up in the faith, and how I suppose sport was an integral part of all of that, and I suppose that growing up in the rural community that I did in the 50s and 60s, how it impacted my life, and hopefully then will impact on the lives of my own children and my grandchildren and the people that I come into contact with through sport or any other way in life. So I was born on the 19th of October 1954, the youngest of 10 children. One little girl died before I was born, her name was Monica. She would have died in 1948. I used to always say there was 9 in our family, and I was a bit crazy, but I never thought that this wee girl is my sister and is now a wee precious person in heaven. But that takes time maybe for that to come into your mind, to say that everybody's special, every child is important. And as Father said here, I lost my brother Peter in October 2010 after an illness of about a year and a half. And my eldest brother Paddy on the 11th of February 2011, exactly the night after Michaela's once mine, he died, and it seemed like he just waited until that event was over, and that during that night he died. So that's what life happens sometimes. I lost my father on the 9th of August 1990. We married myself and children away in the west of Ireland for 2 days. And I came home after a 3.5-hour journey top of the hill, we have our house at home. There was a man on the side of the road lying down, and it could have been my father or another man that looked very like him. I suppose back in those days, men of that era, they wore a welder suit and they wore a big cap and they wore the good glasses on them that they could see plenty with. And it could have been him or a neighbour, but it was my father. And there was a serious shock to the system. That was my first really close encounter with death of somebody so close to me. But then, when time passed and on reflection, I saw it as a blessing. It was a blessing that some of his own was with him in his last moments, that I'd been on the road for 3.5 hours, and God came that I would be the one there for him. I think that's what the blessing was, and you don't see that at the time as a blessing, but there's many things that are blessings that we don't recognise as blessings when they happen. My mother died on the 26th of January 1996, and then she was taken from us in a different way. There were many strokes that debilitated her from each time, and I think that was another way that God was kind to us, because my mother, as you see, with 7 boys in the house and lots of washing and cooking and all the rest to be done, and maybe didn't have time to thank her and appreciate her enough. So she did 3 or 4 years that we needed to help her a lot more than she would have needed before that, and gave us time to be with her, to appreciate her, and to help her in any way we could. So again, difficult, but a blessing in many ways too. And why my parents are so important to me and to our whole family, because they gave us this sense of the presence of God in our lives. And this was growing up in the house, and it was very overt, like, in the house. And the big thing that I remember so well was the Sacred Heart picture, just dominated the room that everything happened in. We're talking the 50s and 60s, we had a sitting room for this and a study for that, and the other day, one room where people lived, and they all did everything together. And the games was in there, and cooking was done in there, and we ate in there, did everything there. So the Sacred Heart picture dominated that room, and to me, it was an outstanding memory to have. And I suppose when we were youngsters, we used to think that God was looking out to see what mischief we were up to. But I think when we get ways up a wee bit and realised He was looking out for us, He was there to protect us. So, again, some British crosses were a big thing. My father always had rushes cut for the 31st of January, carried in and make the rushes and take them to Mass the next morning. We lived very close to the chapel, which was a blessing as well. We could ship across any time we wanted to. Then May altars were a big thing for my mother as well, and it wasn't interflora type stuff. There was bluebells, there was primroses, and there was whatever else was growing along the hedge. And the vase was in the used jam jar with the label taken off it and washed and clean, and a wee light put at it. And again, it was simple, but it was beautiful, because it showed how much our mother had a respect for the mother of Jesus. And I think it's something we just learned instantly. We just learned this without her telling us or without anything. You want to say that faith is caught, not taught, and I can vouch for that. It was caught in our house. It wasn't given to us in any good preaching form. Again, the Holy Water Font was a seriously important item in our house as well. And it was always there, and there was always holy water in it, and we always blessed ourselves when out. And I still have that in my own home, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Now, back in the day, you didn't have to fill it up as much, because there wasn't central heating, and there wasn't these sealed windows, and the wee gap into the front door which had plenty of air in, so it didn't have to be filled up as often as it would be today. But I tell young people when I'm speaking to them, that's a really good wee job they could do, is make sure there's a holy water font at their front door or on the way out, and make it a wee job of theirs to go and put some holy water in it and keep it tapped up, because that gives them an awareness of the presence of God in their lives and the safety of blessing yourself as you go out to. It doesn't actually mean that everything will all be well, but it gives you a bit better chance of things being well. So, then it came to the daily rosary. The rosary was said every night in our house. My father called for the rosary, didn't care if there was neighbours in Killeen or anything else. When it come to the time he'd say the rosary's been said, it was said. We all went down our knees, we all said the rosary. And it's one of my most lasting memories as a child as well. I was small enough to sit on the chair that my father was kneeling at, and I could hear him ringing out the decades of the rosary and the mysteries of the rosary. And I felt so secure, it was such a safe place to be, in among your own family, bringing God into that home, into that room. And what safer place could I have been as maybe somebody 2 or 2.5? I'm so small, I was in that chair and tucked in, and so it's just a great memory that I have. And, another habit that, what you call a habit or a good thing that Daddy did was every night he would go around every room in the house with a holy water bottle, not holy water, the holy water, and a bottle that we kept in those, you probably would know them here too, the wine bottles, and then we have to go to the chapel, because there were circus in the chapel, so we filled them with holy water and bring them home. But he would shake the holy water in every room that we were in, and it's something that I continue to this day. And even though all our children are grown up and gone away from home, I still go with the holy water around their rooms, because I feel that's the connection you can have with something spiritual like that. Even if they're not there, I think they will get the value of me blessing the room that they grew up in. So it's just something that was important to me, and I think it's a good practice to have. So that's fast forward then to April 11th, 1975. We met Marion, my wife, thanks be to God, lovely person to meet. And we're blessed with 4 children, as Father said here, Mark, Michael, Michaela, and Matthew. And you might wonder why we're all M's, but we didn't intend to do it that way. It started out with M's, with Marion's M, obviously, and I'm M as well. But when our first child was born, he was a boy, obviously, and Marion was thinking of calling him Michael, because we wanted to have Michael in the house. But my mother wasn't for that kind of thing. She didn't like the first person being called after the father. There's some of these superstitions that happen with people back in the country where she grew up in Carrickmore. And so we called him Mark, because Marion's grandfather was called Mark. And then we had another wee boy, and he was Michael, that was fair enough. Then we had Michaela, and we liked the name Michaela, and even though it writes like Michael, it doesn't sound like Michael, so it was a nice name to have. And then whenever Matthew came along, we didn't want him to feel out of it. I think he didn't belong to us, so we had to call him a name, so we called him Matthew. So that's why we have 6 Hearts in our house, and it's difficult sometimes when the meal comes to your own blood. But anyway, we were blessed doubly as well, I think, because they grew up into really well-grounded young people who were blessed again to meet people to spend the rest of their lives with. And they all met wonderful people, and they're all good. They're very good couples, the whole lot of them. Unfortunately, Michaela's didn't last anyway long the way we'd like to have done. On the 10th of January, she only had been married on the 30th of December, and that's all the time she got to spend of her married life with John. And so it was a tragic loss to us all, and it's been a very challenging thing, and the most challenging thing for our family. But I feel again we were blessed to have grown up with a faith in the living God who would know our pain and carry us through it. And that's what has happened. And we experienced the value of prayer during that time, because literally thousands of letters and cards, mass cards and all, came to our house. The postman was leaving them in boxes of maybe 100 or 150, 200 at a time for the first 3 or 4 weeks. And that was so good to know that so many people, and I've heard it so much since too, were praying for us. And that's how we got through all of this. And that's why I want to share it with you, that when you hear of tragedies that happen now, and you do feel something in your heart when you hear this happening, I'm asking you, as well as feel it in your heart, say a prayer. Say a prayer for those families. And include them again, and the next time you hear it, include everybody else that you've prayed for before. And I think it's a good habit to get into, because honestly, you don't realise sometimes the value of your prayer, how important it is to people who need it. So I think it's really good to have that message in mind. Don't underestimate the value of your prayer. And then, I suppose, as I said before, when things happen in life and you get tragedy and you get trauma, there's many gifts still as well. And I think, it's now 11 years and a half since Michaela died, and we're blessed now with 11 grandchildren. Now, that doesn't happen to everybody, I know that, but there's many good things that happen in life, and you can begin to appreciate the good things in life again. So we're very blessed to have those wee children, and I think they teach us a lot. I know your own children teach you a lot, and boys are brilliant and special they are, but probably you're very busy and don't have the real same quality time to enjoy them as we have as grandparents of the grandchildren. And I think they teach you a lot, even though we're on in years now. And I love the way that when you go up in the morning, if you're minding them or staying over, and you go up in the morning and get them, and they get up in the wee cot, and there's happy as Larry, they're just such a lovely expression in them. And you bring them down the stairs, and they're looking at the things on the wall, which are there when they look, but there's like it's a new world, it's a new adventure. And just to see the joy that they have, and how life is a really adventure to be explored, and it's so exciting for them. and it's just brilliant to see it. So they're the wee ones that are living in this present moment, and we lose that quite often, that we're so much worried about what's happening in the future, and we're annoyed that something happened in the past, and we miss this moment. So it's about living in the now, planning for the future by all means, aware of things that happened in the past, you can't put them out of your life, but let's enjoy them, and let's smell the roses. As I think it's Father Vincent Travers in the book Out in Touch with God, and he said there's no point in making the trip and missing the journey. And that's very important. Sometimes we make the trip and miss the journey. We need to appreciate the journey. So it's just something to think about. So if I go back to my life in the 50s and 60s then, and though we may not fully appreciate it at the time, God was equally present in the atmosphere. You see, we have all these icons and all these symbols, but if there wasn't a life being lived in that situation that didn't reflect the real meaning of that, then it would be useless. But it wasn't like that. There was an atmosphere of giving, caring, sharing, and respect that prevailed. And though that was not a time of plenty materially, but spiritually it was very rich. And so my mother was just such a wonderful woman. I know everybody thinks the world of their mother, and thanks be to God they do, and that's great. But I just think that my mother was even better than that. So she had this great way of, she just delighted in putting others first. If, 4 or 5 people, she had dinner for 5 or 6 people, and 2 or 3 more arrived, she would just divide it out and ensure everybody got, even to the extent of doing it herself. Such a giving and caring person. She would give to travellers who came around, who back in those days would get tea or milk or butter or bread or whatever to keep them on their way. And then later on, when she had a few pounds more than she had when she was at that stage of her life, she would buy trinkets and things of them coming around that she neither needed nor wanted, but she would buy them anyway because she just wanted to be helpful. And that's the kind she was. And even back in those days too, for people in my vintage, you might know this, you might not, but in the country where I come from, children had to walk 4, maybe 5 miles to school sometimes, and carry the school bag with them and all. And when they come home past our house, maybe it was 2 miles on the way home or whatever, Mummy would give them bread and jam, and bread and syrup, and then you never get bread and syrup. Back in the day, no, never got it. This was a speciality in our part of the world, and it was lovely. And that was the king never wanted to be helpful to these wee people too. And I was said, and she was a counsellor before the term became even widely used in this part of the world, and she would balk at the idea of me suggesting that she was a counsellor because she wouldn't even think of that way in the slightest. But this is why I say so. She would listen to the neighbours. Back in our time in the country when I was growing up, and I don't know if any of you did this or not, but there was this phenomenon called Kayleen. It's not Kaylee dancing or anything. The Kayleen was visiting your house. So people who lived on their own, didn't have many people to live with, would come to the house just to spend a while there and have a chat and have some company. So they would come Kayleen. And then some of them were people who lived on their own and felt a bit vulnerable, even to the extent that Mummy was making bread and things got there, and these people might ask her the same questions, or how much of this keep it in, and how much of that keep it in, and all the rest of it. And we'd listen and say, you asked that last week, and you asked it the week before, what are you asking me again for? That was her mentality. But Mummy would just tell the same, she just answered as if it was the first time she heard the story. It was just a real experience to see her being that person who was prepared to listen and be present to somebody who just needed to be saying what they were saying, and she didn't say, keep quiet, I told you that before, do you not remember what I told you before? So it was just the great way she had to do it. Even to the extent then that people might like walking home, like there wasn't many lights, street lights back then in the country, and there was dark roads and very few houses on it, and some of these people would actually be afraid walking home, and she'd walk with them maybe until they got to their own gate or their own lane. Just doing things like that ultimately showed us the immense respect that she had for everyone and how she made them feel valued. So that's just a snapshot of the faith environment that I grew up in, as I say, the 50s and 60s. And just to think moving that forward, in the current climate where the popular media often invariably portray Catholic values as untrue, we need to exercise some discernment. We need to be careful not to allow what I might describe as the currency of the day to cloud our judgment. We're constantly bombarded with popular media influences, and the popular thing is not necessarily the right thing. We don't have to go with the flow. So, we need to differentiate between and focus on the real world rather than become consumed by the so-called world of reality TV, or the plethora of soap operas, or maybe in the modern ages, the Netflix box sets or whatever. We don't want them to dictate the kind of people we are and what we fill our minds with. We need to really be discerning. And there's a story told about a conversation overheard after the events of 9/11 in New York. You may have heard this before, but if you had, just listen again. If you haven't, there's a moral in it too. A grandfather was talking to his grandson and telling him, I have two wolves barking inside of me. The first wolf is filled with anger, hatred, bitterness, and mostly revenge. The second is filled with love, kindness, compassion, and mostly forgiveness. Now, which wolf do you think will win? The young boy inquired. And the grandfather responded, whichever one I feed. So, emphasise the importance of recognising what we feed our minds with. And I would be of the opinion that a tabloid diet without discernment will inevitably lead to a tabloid outlook of life. I don't think it's the best outlook at this moment in time. So again, enriching material is not as readily available, so it requires effort on our part to address the balance. Much of the celebrity figures in the modern world are, and many are held up as role models, some more doubtful than others. Indeed, many of them espouse a lifestyle that is far removed from the Catholic ethos we would wish our children and young people to aspire towards. So again, discernment is critical. Indeed, all of us are role models, whatever age we are, from the youngest to the more senior people. There are some people there who are going to look at what we do, they're going to take their cue from how we behave, and we're going to influence them either for the good or for something different. So we want to be careful and think about what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're carrying ourselves. That's very important that there's people who are looking on, even when we don't realise they're looking on sometimes. I'll tell you a little story just to illustrate this point as well. The teacher was teaching numbers to the children in school, and she asked little Johnny, did he learn his numbers? And he said, yes, my dad helped me. And she said, very good. What comes after 3 and 4? He answered. Then she said, what comes after 5, 6? He said, oh, very good. She said, that's excellent. And he said, what comes after 10? He says, a jack. So, whilst advances in communication technology, we're all very aware of that now, at revolutionary proportions, and global contact is virtually instant. We need to maintain our awareness of the fact that we find God in people, not in machines or technology. In other words, we as Christians must retain the personal touch. We need to empathise with people. We need to spend time with those who feel vulnerable, like my mother did. We need to help them see themselves as a valued person made in the image and likeness of Christ. We seem to forget that sometimes, that everybody's made in the image and likeness of Christ, and we need to respect them that way. Perhaps we should return to the values of the 50s and 60s, which I believe is very much an integral part of what GA is all about. And so, what can I do to help rather than what's in this for me? That's why we are a good organisation, an amateur organisation. We're always there for people. And indeed, in times of bereavement, there is no better outfit to be part of than the GA. Because they just get into action. They just get the ball rolling right away, and it takes a load of things out of your mind, out of your head. So it's important that we think about that and continue to foster that notion. What can I give, not what's in this for me. If we can get that mentality to our young people today, then we'll be better for it. Because the alternative is the rat race mentality. And I read a little line once which really puts this to bed. It says the problem with being in a rat race is that even if you win, you're still a rat. So, anyway, there used to be an ad up, and this is about listening is very important too, and it's critical that we listen well. So there was a BT ad up in our part of the world a long time ago, and it said it's good to talk, and you understand why that's the case. As you're a telecoms people, they want people talking about it to get their bill to go up and they make more money out of it. But anyway, it's often better to listen. We need to become real good listeners. And it's a skill that doesn't come naturally. You have to think about it. And you have to say, how do I improve my listening skills? So we have to encounter people where they are, not where we'd like them to be. We're very good at fixing others. And there's a tendency in us to, if we get this person, that person, do certain things the way we'd like them to do, that would be great. But that's not our business. Our business is to fix ourselves, to make ourselves the best version of ourselves we can be. And we need to be good at listening. And we need to be active listening. So not listening with the engine running, but you understand what I mean. And we get plenty of chance to practice this. So when you're in company, are you just in there waiting for somebody else to stop saying whatever they're saying, so you'll be saying what you want to say. That happens very easily. Or else they say something and it triggers something in your mind and you feel, I must say this. Sit back and be a bit more reserved than that. Let's listen actively and intently to the person who's speaking until they're finished. And then process it by all means and come back with something that is of value. So, and that's important, to be a really good quality listener. And the other thing about we need to realise in this world is talk about technology and all that's going on, and you'll think that will make everything much easier for people to be part of. But even though there's a real buzz going on in modern life, many people feel empty and alone, they feel left out, they feel just that they're not, nobody listening to them. So we have to really fix our antennae a lot better, to be good listeners, and to be present to people. It's so important to be present to people. And again, we control our language. I'm not just talking profanities, but that's a big thing as well. We need to make sure that when we hear people taking the Lord's name in vain, that actually hits us in the heart and says, that's not nice. And we have to say, I prefer you didn't say that. We have to call it out. We have to say, and when people are, and it's unfortunate that people use F's and expletives and all sorts of things now to such an extent that they don't even realise they're doing it. That language can get out of control. We need to bring our language back to a better standard. We need to just mention it when we hear it. Say, I prefer to describe that some other way. And I'm not saying I haven't used those words, but I wouldn't take the names of the word and thanks be to God. I wouldn't do that. I knew from growing up, Mum and Daddy said that, just don't do that. But I could accuse myself of the other thing from time to time in certain situations. And I'm not saying that I'm exempt from it. But the most thing we must do, we must realise when we do, we must know that it's not becoming a common currency for us to say, oh, I shouldn't have said that, I'll correct that next time. So just think about that, the language we use, it's good to get that sorted out. Because, and again, speaking ill of others, it's easy to become part of the gossip community as well, and to talk about people who are not doing things the way ideally we would like this to be done. We have to think of that as well, and we have to change our whole approach and find things good about someone. This is not easy. It doesn't come easy to us to be the people who look for the good in others. We have to think about it. And when we see and know the good in others, we should highlight it, we should talk about it, and we should praise that element of what they're about. Okay, there may be things they're not too happy about, we can work on that too. But if we catch them doing things well, in fact we catch children in coaching and sport and everything else, it's not about don't do this and don't do that. It's about telling people what it is you want to see. That's important. So if we tell people we want to see, then we'll get more of it. So, and that means that we appreciate the uniqueness of everyone who has God is made with a unique fingerprint, and that's just so important. So, nearly finished. I'm here. We'll finish it now. Just a couple of wee jokes before we finish here. So, here's one anyway. I think it's good to do with that whole thing about communication with a good listener. And I think you'll appreciate this one too. So, while attending a marriage seminar dealing with communication, Colin and his wife Rita listened to the instructor. It's essential that husbands and wives know the things that are important to each other, he said. Then the instructor addressed the men, saying, for example, can you name your wife's favourite flower? And Colin, smiling and looking a little nervous, he leaned over, he touched his wife's arm gently and whispered, it's self-raising, isn't it? Challenge is to add value to our faith life. This is a challenge for all of us. Add value to our faith life. And match from a faith perspective. We content ourselves with the childish mentality of that living God that we should come to know more and more each day. Not having in a place that we learned about 50 years ago, and it's a nice, cozy place to be. But we need to go and express a greater connection with the God who grows with us as we grow older. Mature faith comes from a constant search for new insights and spiritual growth. So, we need the catalyst for the discovery of a deeper relationship with God is through prayer. It's a habit of saying prayers leads to an awareness of the need for God and the actions of our daily living. So there's many forms of prayer. There's thanksgiving, there's praise, there's intercession for those in specific need. prayer as a means of connecting with others. There's simply being quiet in the presence of God. And so for me, there's sort of three pillars that's central to the Catholic faith, in my opinion. And that's the Mass, it's adoration, and it's the Rosary. And we need to think about how we participate in Mass. Do we go there just to be observers, as spectators, or do we go to participate? And if you're going to be good at something, you don't go along, you do a wee bit of preparation, make read up about it first of all. So why not read up about the Gospel? So we go along, it's not new to us, and maybe because we are aware of what's coming, it might trigger something different in our mind about what's about. So we want to be passive observers, we want to be active listeners again. And again, we want to recreate this degree of reverence in our attendance at Mass and the sacredness of what we're present to. Because sometimes we lose that, because the modern world says that you can do everything the same as you do everywhere else. The chapel and Mass and all is a sacred place, and we need to think about that. So people begin to think about that, and maybe we'll behave a little bit different. Again, regular adoration, I believe it's such a great blessing, such a great gift that we have, that no other church has. We have this possibility. Imagine the possibility, that the reality of going into the church the knee before Jesus, really truly present. I have to think about that. There's no point in, thinking this maybe he is present, maybe not. He is present. If we are true Catholics, if we believe in God the way the Catholic faith teaches, we are in the presence of Jesus on that altar. If there's adoration, it's in the tabernacle, there's an adoration. We need to really go and do that and just be in his presence. And I know when you start doing this, it seems like it's a long time to be kind of on your own, not directed or led in prayer or somebody else. That's fine, because anything that we get good at doesn't be easy in the early stages. You have to work at it. It's hard work. It's only when you begin to do more of it that you say, this is work. This is really, I'm getting a lot back from this. That's what people train for in sport and all the rest of it. They don't enjoy the training, they don't enjoy the hard slog, but they get great satisfaction of knowing that because they did that hard slog, this is a better place to be. I believe it's the same with adoration. Then just go do it. You can't tell anybody how good this is, you have to experience it. And I think you should try and experience that for those who haven't had that privilege. And the final thing is the Rosary. I think that the Rosary has been so important in our lives that my father and mother handed on to us. And that, I know that as time goes on and the children are growing up and you get busy and all of that, you maybe don't attend to it the way you would like to, but when the seeds are sown, then they can be nourished again. And we need a formation, we need something to form our habits, that even if we desist from them or go away from them for a while, we can come back to it. And so it's so important, I believe, that the faith was handed on to us by our ancestors under severe stress and pain of maybe death, and particularly our priests, because that's what happened back in the day. We don't have that now. We have more. We can go where we want, thanks be to God. So we shouldn't underestimate what they did to keep the faith there for us. And the Rosary was one of those ways of keeping that faith alive when priests couldn't say Mass or were in great danger. So I just want you to think of that. And the other thing is, another wee story here too, just to illustrate why we need to be regular people who communicate with God. There's a priest again saying he was telling his congregation that he wanted them to be in the army of the Lord. And so the priest is strong with that army. And then he was coming out. And the secular world tells us that faith is a private matter. You should keep it to yourself and don't be taken about anywhere else. But God tells us to go out into the world and tell the good news. So who do we listen to? Do we listen to the secular world or do we listen to God? That's the question. But anyway, as the priest said to this congregation needed to be in the army of the Lord, and this man came out of the back then and shook hands and he says, are you going to join the army of the Lord? He says, I'm already in the army of the Lord. He says, well, how is it if you're in the army of the Lord? I only see you Easter and Christmas. He says, well, I'm in the Secret Service. Anyway, I just wanted to share with you, and look, I can tell you a whole lot of other stuff as well. I don't know where I'm going to be half the time, but there's other stuff I could tell you. But I'm going to finish with another nice little story, which I believe that we need in life. We need to be people of hope. Anything that the faith helps us to become people of hope. Look, things happen And we lose people who are very important, who are very close to us. With God's help, we can get through that. It never goes away. It's always something, I use an analogy like for Michaela's death, that how much you hurt and how much you miss them is just how much you love them. That's the simple fact of the matter. If you didn't love those people that you lost, then there would be no loss to you. It's because you love them so much that you miss them so much. But they're gone from this life, they're not gone away from us. We can still connect with them spiritually. They're still there. We want them to be there. And what I've seen the people who find themselves in a difficult position when trauma happens, that what I found as a sort of analogy to help me through when Michaela died was that yes, you're engulfed with this dark cloud when it happens, and you can't see out, and you wonder what you can do again. You wonder if you never enjoy life again. Well, the things that made you feel good ever make you feel good again. And at a certain time, you don't see out of that. But with prayer and with perseverance and with the grace of God, that cloud begins to lift a bit. So it'll lift a bit, and you will see little things that you can now do that initially you couldn't do. Then it rises still further, and you see more things of life that you can involve yourself and engage in again. Then eventually it goes over to the side here. So it never goes away. This is a reality of your life, which will never go away. But you can get it over there, which means that you see the rest of life, and you can enjoy the rest of life, and know that life is to be lived beyond this trauma and this tragedy. And then you get to a stage where sometimes you can actually go and look at that and be emotional and know that it's a sad part of your life. But you can say, no, it's not in control of me. I'm not consumed by it. I'm aware it's always there, it's part of my life, but I can handle it. So I'm just saying that when people find themselves in that difficult position, just know that with God's grace and with a little bit of time and prayer, then you can begin to deal with it. It's not as if it goes away or you get over it or you get round it. It's always part of your life, but it's a part that you can now take control of, not that it takes control of you. So it's just something that's possible, and it's that sense of hope that I want to give to people. And I'm going to leave you with a wee story that is about being hopeful and being optimistic. So, this is a story of identical twins. One was a hopeful optimist. Everything is coming up roses, he would say. The other twin was a sad and hopeless pessimist. He thought that Murphy, as in Murphy's Law, was an optimist. The worried parents of the boys brought them to the local psychologist. He suggested to the parents a plan to balance the twins' personalities. On their next birthday, put them in separate rooms to open their gifts. Give the pessimist the best toys you can afford, and give the optimist a box of manure. The parents followed these instructions and carefully observed the results. When they peeked in on the pessimist, they heard him audibly complaining, I don't like the colour of this computer, I bet this calculator will break, I don't like this game, I know someone who's got a bigger toy car than this. Tiptoeing across the corridor, the parents peeked in and saw the little optimist gleefully throwing the manure up in the air. He was giggling. You can't fool me. Where there's this much manure, there's got to be a pony.
So the night is young, and it's kind of, I'm going to call into your court now. If you want to ask, make a comment, make a question, or indeed any of the panel here that you might like to ask a question, or if they want to chip in on their own bat with a story or an anecdote or something that illustrates their own journey and their own faith journey, their own spirituality. We'd be love to get that too, but no pressure on anybody. I'm just saying, feel free to come and speak. But maybe if I start off by asking, is there anybody in the gathering that would like to ask a question of Mickey to begin with?
You will warm up, I know you will.
Mickey, your gift was involving the Waterford and Waterford and all that.
God always likes people who are patient.
No answer required. We live in hope, though. It's coming.
We had a bit of 119 years.
Yes. I remember Chair Loughnane saying after they won the Munster for the first time, the first All Ireland they won, what was 97? 95. He recounted, he told the story in a long way, and he said every one of those years makes this victory all the sweeter. When we had that victory, it's only the sweetest victory in ours. Anybody, apart from that sad story? Isn't it interesting? I was struck by the fact that Vicky talked, I would say, for about 40 minutes at least, and we kind of lionize him for the fact of his great success in managing teams, but he spent all his time talking about his faith and how significant that was for him. And maybe I'm going to ask him a question. Were there moments in the midst of your training and your work with the teams that you succeeded with when the faith that you spoke of became particularly significant?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you'll be probably aware of in 1997, 15th of June, we were playing a minor match with Armagh in the Ulster Championship, and ball came in from the corner, ball here came in, dived to punch it to the net, keeper came out to save it, got it, hit him, the two collided, he hit his knee right onto his rib cage there. We went to hospital, and we went on, the senior match was played after, and we went around afterwards to see had he broken ribs or what the story was. We were right at the hospital, he had actually died. And that wasn't supposed to happen. Like, kind of the young lads go out to play football at 17, 18 years of age, they don't expect not to come home, nor do their teammates expect them not to come home. So that was a really sort of a traumatic thing for all of those players. And, where else would you turn then? You have to turn to God to just for everybody to try and we were lucky that Father Jared McAleer was with us, training the team. And we had access to a priest like that, and we got people in, psychologists and people like that to help with the boys. But it's just it's good that those boys actually came from faith homes, because I know, and particularly we're talking now 97. A lot of them they all went to mass. Mass was part of our preparation. If we were going away somewhere. We're lucky enough with Father Jared. But I've been very lucky to write to Tyrone all the time I was with Tyrone. If we went anywhere for the weekend, we could get a priest in any part of the country, just bring them up and they come in to the hotel and say Mass for us. So that's just creating that environment of prayer, if you like, as part of what you do as a person, as a sports person, as a group. And I think that was good for our players too, that was part of their formation, if you like. And that when this happened, they had that to lean on as well, and that their parents and their family to lean on too. And then, of course, Conor McAllen, 7 years later, sudden death in his own bed at night. So these boys have another taste of that. So I think it made our young men growing up very aware of the vulnerability of life, and not thinking that you're indispensable or indestructible because you're a young fella. So maybe it was a hard lesson in ways, but maybe a blessing again. And I think sometimes a lot of these things that are difficult and challenging turn out to be a blessing. And all that we did as a team, and there was awareness of how you would look out for each other, and how you'd be aware of the players, if some of their grandparents or somebody died, unfortunately, that those players were always very aware to make contact and to be supportive of them. So I think it's nice that it happens that way, and I think we need to keep that as part of who we are as people growing up. So sport is very important, and there's many lessons to be learned from it, of course. But I think we need to have God in the middle of that very fast. We can't think, there's nothing more important than the day you stand before God in judgment, that you've said, I did the best I could to be the best version of myself, and to be as good an example as I could to the people that I met on the way. That to me is the most important accolade we need when time comes. And I'd rather be working on that than any other areas, to tell you the truth.
I suppose, Vicky, that was very empowering from you. She's had an incredible 45 minutes. I suppose, look, on behalf of myself and everyone in the parish, we're delighted to have you down here today. No incredible speech really there. I suppose, look, from our point of view, I suppose the question, and we had a conversation just before we came here, the question is, you know, down here in the south, in contrast to up the north, I suppose we all know that, you know, up the north, you know, you had the troubles, the whole lot, and I suppose we're going up in the north, anyone who goes up the north, the two things that kind of, you know, keep your identity going is, you know, your religion and the GAA. I suppose you had that made you overcome the struggles of the troubles. But I suppose the north, in contrast to probably the south, you know, probably isn't changing as much. Still, you know, in contrast to where we are now, Ireland, down the south, you know, it's very much changing. It's a different Ireland in contrast to the whole Ireland that we grew up in. I mean, the whole Ireland that we grew up in back in the 1980s, I suppose. We were made to go to church, like, you know, when first thing you were marched over here to the parish, you know, 11, 12 o'clock, you had to go to church. You know, the pubs aren't open, pub shop between 2 to 4 o'clock every Sunday, I remember well, and, you know, they were great times. But what the question I've asked, and even with Fonzie here, and, you know, Pat, you know, I mean, anyone who knows Pat, in the parish, incredible man. You know, I think he's a saint. You know, I think he's, you know, things he's done for people in this parish is incredible man. But you know, what can, you know, you touched on it there that, you know, I asked you how are you with numbers in regards to young people going to church, and you said the numbers are not quite high. That's probably the opposite down here. Probably not so in the rural parishes where, you know, the numbers are still high, but, you know, I'd say within Waterford City, this church, I don't live in the church, I go down to the Dominican, sometimes I pop in here every now and again, but down at the Dominican church, you could have a handful of people. So, what have we got to do to probably entice the younger generation to come back to church? I mean, I've listened strongly to even Jason Murphy Council here, spoke very, very well. I've often touched base with Jason. I'd meet him, you know, he's often walking in the park and spoke very, very well, and he's after coming back. You know, I think it's probably a cycle down here that, you know, even as we said it, where you kind of get drawn away in your 20s, your 30s, you go off and you live a good life, you partying, you know, and then you kind of, when you have your own kids and you push on, you kind of get drawn back into it again. But, like, what has Father Pat and the likes of Fonzie here got to do? Like, does it have to be a push from the government where, you know, you even see where they're giving out meals before they go for the primary schools, before they go in the morning, their lunch. You know, we see that there's an awful lot of homeless people out there at the moment. You know, people are struggling to put food on the table. Is it a case that where maybe the government need to step in and say, well, look, you know, start supporting the churches and say, well, look, you know, to entice people to come back and say, well, look, after every service on Sunday, say 12 o'clock, there's actually a meal, you know, provided. So I think it's kind of a challenging time for the church down here in the south, in contrast to the north, where, you know, the GAA and, you know, Catholicism, the religion, you know, you're sometimes you can fight the battle, to kind of, to keep your identity going. Like, in contrast, us down here, it's a change in Ireland. I mean, there's different faiths, and a funny story. There was once we said Tony Brown were over in the All-Star tour over Phoenix and Vegas, and we were after that. We went out the night before. We met these two American girls, and one of them was so engrossed in Irish Catholicism. You guys are Irish, this back and just stuck around. So we were trying to entice the people back to the hotel, and she said, "Well, look," she said, "I'll bring you to every shopping outlet in Phoenix, Arizona, on one count." She said, "You come to church with me in the morning." So we were paying the drink anyway. So I said, "Yeah." Lo and behold, she arrives back anyway, following morning, and opens the door and she said, "Right, you guys ready to go to Mass?" So we sat in Tony Brown. Tony now is, we were fed the Tony after closing the lights. Tony jumped up, I jumped up. Tony's in this parish. Tony jumped up and he said, "Come on, we go for the crap." This was about 9:30 in the morning. And someone split the rocks over Phoenix, Arizona, with 30 degrees in January. The odds have done a couple of odds. And I tell you, it was the best match we've ever had. The police came down, the police was coming down, he was dancing, he was hopping around, and we were clubbing and dancing, and it was a Catholic mass. So lo and behold, the police said in the afternoon, "Right, you guys, you all gotta come over to the hall. We're going to have the best American breakfast ever." So while we were sitting there, we went over, sitting down and having the breakfast. And I turned around to Tony Brown and I said, "Could you imagine this back home?" I said, we're sitting down here eating our breakfast after the morning mass. And I said, maybe it's something like that has to, kick off, entice the younger generation back to go to church again. I don't know, because in contrast to the north, we're struggling big time down there. And I think we're a small bit hypocritical, as I said, you touching on there. Confirmations, communions, marriages, get packed out of church, funerals. When it comes to, doing the bread and butter stuff, you just want to turn up.
I wouldn't complete that story at all. Not least at all. But I think, you make the point well that obviously the world is changing, the country's changing, but God doesn't change. That's the important thing. And I think what we, who are believers, maybe who are practicing, then we need to let it be seen that this is a good place to be. You see, there's no point in going and just going through the motions and being a doer kind of a character and going out and being a messer as well. I think that's what I'm saying. We have got to embrace this Jesus person. We've got to embrace the fact that we believe that he's truly present, and that it's so important that we build a relationship with him. And even to teach young people again that you enjoy, and not because it's easy, because sometimes it's not easy. Not everybody just, thinks it's dead easy to get up in the morning and go to Mass, or it's dead easy to say the rosary, or it's dead easy to be prayerful. It's not, because it's something you have to work at. But we need to do it. We can be the catalyst to bring this back to, if we really show people that it's great to be a Catholic, it's great to believe in God, and even when you get setbacks, to be able to say, I still am very happy in what I'm doing, I'm very happy in my faith life. And let us be the example to people. You could get tied up in trying to say, how do you make it attractive in a worldly way? I think we've got to make it attractive in a spiritual way. People have got to see there's a glowness, there's a contentment in us. because we believe, and because we practice, and because we get in touch with God, and because we do it on a regular basis. It just needs to be there to say, I don't know what that person has, but I want a bit of it. We need to be able to get to that place, that people who really truly believe, you can see it in them. You can see a glow in them, you can see a contentment in them, you can see just a zest for life. And that's what it can do for us. We have to think about that and say, this is a good place to be, and I want to give off the vibes of there's no better place to be than communion with Jesus. And that's just all I can say.
Thanks, Pat. Just to follow up from John, thanks for the kind words, John. I appreciate them. Mickey, what a fantastic talk. I mean, been to a lot of talks every day. You can hear people chattering in the background, all types going on. But in your talk, you literally do a pin drop. Everyone was transfixed in what you're saying. But I suppose just to take up a little bit on John's point, and I do take the point because I think a lot of what he says is correct in what he's saying. I think down here there's a bit of complacency about our faith. I mean, 30 or 40 years ago you had full churches. When I was young, I'm 50 in 2 weeks' time. When I was young going to St. Paul's here, you couldn't get in the door. And I do wonder, you spoke about handing down the faith down to the next generation. Sometimes I wonder what a lot of the people were doing here. To be quite honest, I think it was maybe a bit of a habit to go to Mass. I don't think they really understood their faith. I don't think they understood the role that Jesus had in their lives. I came back to the church, I suppose, it's about 5 or 6 years ago. I had a little bit of a life like John was having as well, but a little bit lost. When I look back now, I was a bit lost, and I think there's a lot of talk about mental health at the moment, and rightly so, but I just think that the Catholic Church has a massive message that can go an awful long way to solving the mental health crisis here in Ireland if people would just embrace it and listen to you about the tragedies that you've gone through in your own life, the durability that you got from your belief in the Saviour, Jesus Christ. But I think we need to get that message out there. I mean, last week I was with my son, I was up with Jordan Peterson up in Dublin, and as you know, Jordan Peterson is a psychologist, and although he's not a Catholic publicly, but I think he's travelling that journey at the moment. A lot of the teams that he talks about are certainly Catholic teams, and I'm optimistic because when I was up at Tree Arena, I don't know what the Tree Arena takes, but it was absolutely packed. It was packed with young people, men, women, couples, all kinds of people. In some ways, a lot of lost people looking for the answer, and I suppose Jordan Peterson is a signpost along that road, and ultimately I hope that road for these people will lead to Jesus Christ. But for me, and I know the last little while we had a facility out here where people gave their feedback on the future of the church, and I have to say I was a little bit disappointed with some of the narrative around it and some of the answers. I believe that the answer maybe is to, I won't use the term compromise, but maybe to change it, that we need to become more relevant. And I think if we become more relevant, we dilute the faith, and in some ways by becoming more relevant, we become more irrelevant. And that's where we're going. I think myself that young people particularly, that's why we get involved in sport. Young people, they want to challenge, they want the bar to be high. I think the bar should remain high in the Catholic Church. It's something to just strive for. Faith is a bit of a mountain. You're never going to get to the top, but the only game is on the mountain. You should be off the mountain. Stay on the mountain. It's difficult to get to the top. I was recently, again, away in Germany there recently, and the highest mountain in Germany is the Zugspitze, and right at the very top of this mountain, I don't know how many thousand meters it is, there's a big, huge crucifix at the top. And you can go up and look at this crucifix. I think it was put there in 1850 by whatever climber went up there, and then the villagers went up and put up the huge crucifix. I was wondering what motivated them. And I thought of this after, I was thinking about this yesterday. And I said, remember, there's no climber goes to climb a low mountain. You strive for the high mountain. And Jesus at the top of the mountain, you have to strive for that. You have to get that message out to young people. You have to give them the message of hope, that there's something after this, and there's something coming, and it's glorious. And we need to get that out, but it's a bit difficult how we set it. Maybe that's what we need to do a bit more.
How are we doing? Are you okay for another few minutes? Terry, would you like to say a word? Do I put you on the spot?
Just to sort of repeat, I suppose, what was said, to thank Mickey, lucky enough when I was involved with Waterford to hook up with Mickey a few times. Watching him from afar, I suppose I was always impressed with his ability to kind of remain cool on the side, very composed, just from a sporting point of view, hugely kind of composed on the line in the midst of, really epic battles, I suppose, particularly against Kerry, I suppose, over the years. And behind that, I would have always seen, without having met him first, I would have seen kind of stubborn features as well, to be honest with you. I'm going to just be very honest here now. A ruthless streak as well. A ruthless streak that I think sometimes we get lost in the spectrum of when we talk about management or leaders in the church, that they can't be compassionate and ruthless at the same time. I think people can be what they need to be according to the decision they have to make at a given time. And I think Mickey is that. He's able to be cold and calculated in a nice way, and he's able to be very compassionate. I'm on the record saying I'm a little bit of a hypocritical Catholic in that I kind of pray when I want something, or someone's sick in my family. I have a tendency to kind of look to God then, so I've learned a huge amount tonight. I learned a huge amount from my parents, even when my own father, not John's dad, was dying there a number of weeks ago. My own father passed away in the last 18 months. Hugely devout Catholics, brilliantly, invested in the faith. I'm looking down at my best mates down there, Dermot Dooley. Dermot was a teacher in our school, religion teacher in our school. Just a quick story, I suppose, in Zero, actually Mickey's first book. I read Mickey's first book after his first All-Ireland victory, and he had talked about visuals that they had posted, that Michaela had actually given him posters of predictions into the future, that they'd win the minor in 0-10 or 0-8, I can't remember the exact years, and we plagiarised it ourselves in the college. We wrote up, it was 3 years before the Harte Cup in 07, we wrote up on it in 04, Believe 07, Harte Cup 07, we copied Mickey's he was ahead of himself in terms of psychological and visual preparation, and we did that, and we, even just having the sign there, John talks about things that kind of can help, if you like, just having the sign there, we believe, almost kind of reinforce the whole fact that we might do it in a positive psychological kind of way. And Dermot had come back from a Sally course in San Francisco. Brother Tom is here, and Brother William is well too brilliant, the Sally men, and we were getting prepared for the Harte Cup that year, which is the equivalent of the McCrory Cup or the Hogan Cup in the north. And Dermot said, after learning the De La Salle prayer, and we're going to say it, live Jesus in your heart. St. John Baptist De La Salle pray for us, live Jesus in our hearts forever. And I said, oh Jesus, Dermot, excuse me for using that. Apologies. I said, Dermot, no, the lads are going to not embrace that at all. And Dermot said, no, I'm telling you, stick with it. And I remember his initial scepticism up when we played Middleton in the challenge on Ireland CBS. We had a group of 16, 17, 18-year-olds in the huddle, and Dermot said, we're going to do this prayer now, I want you to repeat. St. John Baptist said, pray for us, live Jesus in our hearts forever. And initially there was kind of scepticism. I could see with young people, there's a little bit of laughter, a little bit of, skittering, etc. And, as the year just progressed then, they just became part of the normal kind of maxim of what we did. We ended up in Croke Park to win. We won the All-Ireland in 07 against Kenny CBS in Croke Park, and I remember at half time we'd kind of gone full circle with the prayer that we were praying for real divine intervention. And there where Mick Murphy was teaching us said, say the prayer, say it twice. He said, say it twice. And we were in the huddle. And we had, but the point of making this was you had people that were kind of sceptical around faith and had been just turned by the charisma of Dermot, by the power of his personality, and by the presence, that we were kind of doing something that was bigger than ourselves. And John will tell you, when we were in the dressing room, I think against Cushendall in 08 or 09, John, in the semi-final, Dermot and ourselves, we were all in the panel, De La Salle playing Cushendall. And I remember John turning to Dermot and he said, Dooley, hit the prayer. Dooley, hit the prayer. He said, it just became part of what we were doing and how we were doing it. The last point I make, just I suppose, is just to try and regulate myself and the efforts you kind of make. My father sat religiously in Mount St. Church every day, said the rosary every day, I say for 5-6 years, went in to Edmund Rice Church, said it every day, they set the example. My mum is, and I see Sarah's mum and John's mum there as well, all brilliantly kind of devout Catholics, and you learn from them, I suppose. You learn from their example. Mickey said today about his mom, said she'd live in the mirror and she'd never correct anyone. I was in class in the afternoon today, I was after explaining about Shankill Oaf, Patrick Kavanagh's poem, I'd say 4 times, and Jimmy down the back puts up his hand and says, what's that about? I said, I'm just after explaining